The twins wouldn't stop screaming, and the husky wouldn't stop digging. That was the summary Carla Mendes gave her husband Victor when he called from the warehouse at 6 p.m. 2 8-month-old boys, Diego and Marco, in matching white onesies, crying in unison from their shared crib. And Shasta, their 4-year-old Siberian husky, methodically scratching at the baseboard behind the nursery radiator. Not the frantic digging of prey drive. A slow, deliberate pawing at a specific 6-inch section, followed by sniffing, followed by more pawing. 3 hours straight. Carla had tried redirecting. She'd closed the nursery door with Shasta outside. The dog scratched the door for 40 minutes, then delivered the full Arctic howl that made neighbors text. Carla let her back in. By the time Victor arrived at 7:30, the twins were fed, changed, and sleeping. Shasta was still at the baseboard. Victor knelt beside her, pressed his ear to the wall. Nothing. He knocked. Hollow. He pulled the radiator cover off. The baseboard was separated from the wall by a 1/4 inch. Not unusual in a 60-year-old house. But there was a smell. Faint, metallic, slightly sweet. He couldn't place it. He called his brother-in-law Luis, a licensed cummer. Luis came the next morning, pulled the baseboard off, and found the pipe. A copper fitting behind the radiator had developed a pinhole leak. Water had been seeping into the wall cavity for weeks, saturating the insulation and wooden lath. The moisture created a sealed pocket, warm from the radiator, no airflow. A perfect incubator. For mold. If you stay for stories about the invisible things families don't see until someone points them out, subscribe to Family Story Hub. The remediation company opened the wall 2 days later. Black mold, Stachybotrys chartarum, covering an area 2 feet by 3 feet directly behind the nursery radiator. Spore concentration in the nursery air was 4 times the EPA's threshold. The environmental hygienist explained that Stachybotrys releases mycotoxins particularly dangerous to infants. Developing lungs process more air relative to body weight. Chronic first-year exposure is associated with respiratory illness, immune suppression, and in severe cases, pulmonary hemorrhage. The twins crying, the hygienist said, persistent irritability in infants exposed to elevated mycotoxin levels is well documented. Their respiratory systems were responding to something they couldn't articulate. Carla sat on the stripped nursery floor and thought about the 3 hours she'd spent trying to make Shasta stop digging. Has your dog ever scratched at a wall, a floor, or a surface, and you couldn't figure out why? Tell us. Your story might make someone check behind the baseboard. The remediation took 4 days. Twins slept in the master bedroom. Shasta slept outside their door. When the nursery was rebuilt, new drywall, sealed vapor barrier, Carla placed the cribs on the opposite wall. She left the radiator side clear. Shasta walked into the finished nursery, circled once, sniffed the new baseboard for 3 seconds, and lay down between the cribs. She didn't scratch. She didn't dig. She didn't howl. Every nose that won't quit deserves to be trusted. Subscribe to Family Story Hub. Victor installed humidity sensors behind every radiator that weekend. Checked monthly. Never found another leak. But he never told Shasta to stop scratching again. Because the last time she scratched, she was right. Some alarms don't beep. They dig. The remediation company's environmental report was 12 pages long. Carla read every word. The key findings were concentrated in 3 paragraphs on page 7. The pinhole leak had been active for an estimated 4 to 6 weeks. The mold colony had reached a surface area of approximately 6 square feet. The airborne spore concentration in the nursery, measured at 4 sampling points, averaged 2,847 spores per cubic meter. The EPA recommends remediation when counts exceed 700. The twins had been sleeping in that room since birth, 8 months of breathing air that was silently degrading their respiratory development. The pediatric pulmonologist who reviewed Diego and Marco's subsequent chest X-rays found no structural damage. Their lungs were developing normally, but he noted that both boys showed elevated IgE levels, consistent with chronic allergen exposure. And he prescribed a 3-month monitoring protocol to ensure the immune response normalized once the exposure ceased. The persistent crying was the symptom, the pulmonologist said, not colic. Not teething. Their lungs were telling you something their mouths couldn't. Carla remembered every night she had stood in that nursery, rocking one twin then the other, wondering what she was doing wrong, wondering if she was failing them. The guilt hit her in the HVAC company's parking lot, sitting in her car with the remediation invoice on the passenger seat, crying into the steering wheel. Victor found her there. He didn't say anything about the invoice. He said, Shasta knew. The insurance company covered 70% of the remediation. Victor covered the rest with overtime shifts. The nursery was rebuilt with moisture-resistant drywall, a sealed vapor barrier behind every wall, and a ventilation system that included HEPA filtration. Shasta inspected the finished room with the thoroughness of a building inspector. She circled each wall, sniffed each baseboard, checked behind each crib. When she reached the radiator, now enclosed in a ventilated cover with a condensation drip tray, she sniffed the new baseboard for exactly 3 seconds. Then she laid down between the 2 cribs, stretched her front paws forward, and closed her eyes. The twins slept through the night for the first time in weeks, both of them. Simultaneously, no crying, no fussing. No persistent irritability triggered by an invisible poison drifting through the air their parents couldn't smell and their lungs couldn't filter. Victor checked the humidity sensor the next morning. The reading behind the radiator was 34%. Normal. Dry. Clean. Shasta didn't scratch. She didn't dig. She didn't howl. The wall was healed, and she knew it before the sensor confirmed it.